I threw clay on the potter's wheel for off and on for 40 years. And then after I got my diagnosis, I realized that I needed to make some changes. So I turned my garage into a little studio and got a slab roller so I could work there. And then when I gave up driving, and I hadn't thought this through, but I had everything there that I needed. So it was a very easy transition because you've got to stay busy. With mine, with vascular dementia, I could pretty much remain like I am for an indefinite period of time. Or I could, go downhill. There's just no telling. It's like a treasure hunt. You just never know what's coming. I sell most everything I make. We formed a co-op gallery at Odyssey, and we've got 25 artists, all different kinds. We've got sculptors, we've got throwers, we've got hand builders. I sell my work through the co-op, through the gallery, and I have a little studio space that I share with a friend, and we've turned that into a gallery. About 4 years ago, I was going along, living my life, and I wasn't thinking dementia. I knew that there was a problem because I was going along here and then I'd have a drop. I was going along here and I'd have a drop. And it was very obvious to me that something was happening. Most people who think of dementia think of it as memory loss, period. And there's so much more to it than that. For me and for many people I know, it's a loss of the executive functions in your brain. And they are loss of emotional control. They're difficulties in planning. They are losing your thought filters for what comes out your mouth, not thinking about it. It just organizational ability, what you would multitasking, what you would think of as executive type functions. I had wanted to join a support group because, if I told my friends, well, I'm having some cognitive problems, they'd be in complete denial. Oh, I forget things too. Oh, everyone does that kind of thing. And anything that happens in your life is not all bad, no matter how much it seems like, boy, this is just the pits. Can't get any lower than this. There's always good things. And I think it's, here comes the emotional part. It's good for people to look for those because it makes your life lots better. I had a very vague idea about what it was like to have dementia, what people with dementia acted like. And I was just blown away by the panel of people that took part in this dementia conference. They all had dementia. They were bright and funny. Humor was the big part of it, but compelling, very interesting, and I got a whole different idea of a dementia. It's part of life. If it happens to you, there's no reason to be afraid of it. Just do the best you can. People with dementia are just like everybody else. We live, we love, we die. Everybody dies. And, you know, it's part of life. Dementia isn't an end of anything. It's just part of my life. There's a whole lot more of my life, and when I need to deal with the dementia part, I do. When I don't usually even think about it. But it was, and I hadn't thought that I'd get back into clay after I retired, but things just work out.
Before the Storied Life Foundation shares more stories, in a moment, we'd first like to tell you about our vision and invite college-level film students nationwide to enroll in independent study courses through your own institutions, helping us produce life story films for individuals battling life-threatening illnesses in your own communities. We also invite others to sponsor our work by visiting our website, www.thestoriedlifefoundation.org, where you can contribute to our 501c3 nonprofit classified as a tax-exempt public charity. First, our vision. Although you've been listening as Denise courageously shared her journey with illness, many patients we served by the Storied Life Foundation will not wish to share their personal lives publicly at all. They'll prefer to share their life story films with loved ones only. That will be an individual decision for each. Others, like Denise, will feel that their experiences might lighten another's burden if shared with the world. Many we serve will not wish to recount their stories of illness, even for their loved ones. They'll choose to share only the joyful stories of their lives, in personal films with their families and friends alone. Stories of school days, of best friends, of the birth of children, of courtships and wedding days, of career struggles and milestones along the way. Stories like these and others we'll share in a moment.
My dad built a screened back to his truck, and we took off cross country. And my brother and I spent the day riding in the back of the truck, and in the evening we'd pull off the side of the road. My parents would climb in the back too, and we'd spend the night and then take off. We were headed to Oregon after I had kids. We lived next door to a lovely old woman named Mrs. Elam. Well, she had two sisters. One lived in town in Durango, and one lived out of town on an old farm. And Mrs. Elam and her sisters would invite my family along in the fall to pick apples out of this 100-year-old orchard on the farm. And they had an old oak hand cider press. And my kids would crawl up in the trees and shake the trees, and we'd pick up the apples and truck them over to the press and squeeze the cider for the apples. And these old ladies worked right along with us, but they didn't have the strength to do the whole thing themselves, which is why they took us along.
As we close, we'll share more of Denise's stories and an illustration of the films we'll facilitate across the country. We hope you'll join the Storied Life Foundation on this journey to celebrate the stories of our lives. If you're battling a serious, life-threatening illness, If you're a film student who would like to serve those who serve, if you're an individual or a corporation interested in supporting our work, contact the Storied Life Foundation at www.thestoriedlifefoundation.org.
We had bought a house down on the river, on the Animas River, and it ran right past our backyard, and it was kind of a wild area. There were kind of beaches. Rivers in Colorado, in the mountains anyway, are pretty shallow, and you can wade in them, you can swim in them. Cold because they come from ice melt, but you get used to that. And there were trees, and it was a place where my kids could have the freedom like I had when I was a kid. And it was great. I grew up in Grand Junction, and when I was when I was going to be a junior in high school, we moved to Farmington, New Mexico, with my dad's job. Grand Junction was a small town, and friendly, and this was 60, 70 years ago. I mean, life was different then. Neighborhoods were safe. It was okay to let your kids just wander, do whatever they wanted. My brother and I would take long bike rides out in the country. One of my fondest memories when I was a kid was behind our house was a full city block of wild area, trees, meadows, and there was an old, tall, wooden board fence around it. But there were boards that were out, so the neighborhood kids could get in there. And there was no one else there. It was like the hidden garden. And we'd climb trees, we'd play, we'd make up fantasy games. It was just a wonderful place to live. I didn't start traveling until after I had the stroke, when I was 52. When I had the stroke, I had an epiphany. I realized that anything could happen to anyone at any time. There's no telling what's coming at you tomorrow. So I felt that it was important for me to do the things that I'd always wanted to do now, instead of waiting till after I retired, because who knew what would happen. So whenever I had the leave and the money, I'd take off. And I went everywhere. My favorite places, there's probably not one. Loved Nepal. Went hiking in the Himalayan foothills. It was so cool, absolutely beautiful. Lovely people. I liked hiking because it got me out away from the cities, and I could see how people lived and what the country was really like. I went to the Amazon, took a riverboat trip. We lived on the riverboat, up to the headwaters of the Amazon. It was just incredible. At night, when we were working our way up the Amazon, you could see it was like we're the only people in the world. But you could, every once in a while, you'd see a campfire along the bank of the river where, fishermen had camped out. But absolutely beautiful. The river floods back into the forest at 20 to 30 feet and we'd take little boat trips back along what had been trails through the jungle, but were now waterways, and we'd be up in the trees with the birds. It was just so cool. And the last.
The Storied Life Foundation wishes to thank independent study film student Montana Fensky, as well as Ann Slatton and film students at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, for their invaluable assistance in the production of this film.